Boom. All right, everybody, welcome in. Those of you joining us live and everybody watching on the replay. This is the frequency of flowing in color. I always like to set the stage in the beginning just for those who might be new, or maybe you got this link from one of your friends and you're like, what is this space about? And we are really holding space here for our personal growth, but also holding hands on our journeys through life. And so, we are a collective of women of color who are wanting to share, inspire, and educate our communities. And this is one of the ways that we are doing that. And so we meet on a weekly basis, and there's going to be different topics every week. And this week happens to be end of summer. And Moonching, I'll allow you to say the phrase that I probably won't pronounce correctly, and then we can get started. Maybe we could do introductions also. So I'll just briefly share a little bit about myself to not take a little bit of time, but my name is Simone Nofel, and I am a mom, I am a wife, I am an applied epigeneticist and a children's book author. I do many, many things, but I really consider myself just to be a spiritual scientist. And I met Moonching through a community called Healy. And so we both have a frequency device. Well, we have several, but we have frequency devices it's called the Healy, and that's where we connected. That's where we found each other, and we met each other in Portugal during the Healy retreat, and are just continuing to grow our understanding of the world of frequency and energy together. And I love hearing from Moonching because she is able to weave in her own practices and her own innate gifts with frequency. And so she's been taking us on a journey. This will be part 3. And so the first 2, you guys can go back and look at the recordings, but this one is going to be really special. We're in a special time frame right now on the planet, shifting seasons. And so at every one of those points, those 4 times of year when the seasons change, it's really important to set your inner terrain, right? Like really nurture that inner terrain so that the external forces don't get you discombobulated. And so I'm really excited for this. And Moonching, I'll let you introduce yourself and the topic, and then we could just dive right in.
Hey, uh, so I'm Munching, and actually, I we are calling this part 3, but I think we can just keep counting because um, I am. I've actually decided today that I want to start this conversation because I don't want it to be like a lecture. I would like it. I would like to continue it being a conversation, and it's not going to be so focused on what I think most people think Chinese medicine is, or even just medicine, because I brought this up before that to me um, it's always seemed like it was more of a way to live or a way to understand life. So it's more like philosophy. And I'm getting a lot more of that since I started prepping for this particular time. And we changed the time and the day pretty last minute. And I have to tell you, I don't know. I wonder if any of you are affected by whatever the heck is going on up there. Besides the full moon, there's lots of retrogrades. I'm not an astrologer. I don't really understand a lot of it, but I feel it this time. Um and also just wanted to ask Simone for helping with the chat because I can't really look at it or else I'm gonna get even more discombobulated. So I haven't slept for 2 days, more or less. Like last night, 4 a.m. I was still awake. Um and I considered calling Simone and canceling because I was just so tired. But I didn't, and I'm still really excited to be here and happy to be here. And for the first time, it's not because I felt obligated. It's because I just I really um treasure the energy of sharing here and being supported back. And I knew that it wasn't going to be like I didn't have to put any pressure on myself. It didn't have to be a certain way. It didn't have to be, perfect or whatever. So, yeah, I just wanted to open with that. And while I was thinking about it, but I'm gonna just say start with this. So because we did advertise that this is going to be about autumn and long and whatever. But so I'm gonna do that, and then I'm gonna kind of I guess pull back, zoom out into a bigger picture. So um I actually this kind of prompted me to getting more clear around these things called solar terms that I think it's not just the lunar calendar, but that's how Chinese culture commonly understands. So it's every 15 days, and um, the year is more or less 360 days. So it's very even. Every 15 days is a particular solar term, and then one, two, three, I think six solar terms adds up to be about 3 months, which is equivalent to the season that we talk about in the West. And it's very interesting to me because when I started researching, I realized that on the Lionsgate portal, everyone was so big on that on August 8th. That was actually the first day of autumn. And yet here in the West, we always kind of think of August as like kind of the last month of summer, but it's like kind of like to me it seems like the most summer month of the summer. But it's actually autumn, and it is definitely starting to feel like that where I am, and and it's never definitive, like clearly, like black and white, the defined or like summer, autumn, because it's about energy, right? It's about yin yang, and it's never all yin, all yang. So when we move from summer to autumn, it's still going to be like a mixture. And now we're actually after that. It's been more than 15 days since August 8th. So now we're at the second one, which is really hard to pronounce. It's like two syllables. You have to roll your tongue. It's a shu shu. So shu means heat, and true can mean to stay put or kind of like running out of. So it's like running out of the heat and the yang energy of summer. But it's even though we're already into autumn, we're not totally done with summer yet. That's how every section is. It's like yeah, it's to me makes a lot more sense because energy just doesn't work like particles. It's not like um, contained like that. So it's not going to be clearly like crossing section, right? And so autumn is associated with the system of metal, which is belongs to the systems of lung and large intestine. And the color of it is white, the direction is west. And so some things we associate with metal, some activities, I guess, is like organizing. That's a very metal behavior. Um, and so if you wanted to do more metal related things, that would be like one of them. Um, and uh, the lung, we usually talk about the yin organ versus the yang organ more um, because, well, that's probably going to be way too complicated to explain, but that's just the way it is for now. So the yin organ, which is lung, it's actually it kind of leads the clock the circadian clock too. So we always think we learned the whole 24 hours by starting with lung, which is 3 to 5 a.m. And right after that, 5 to 7 is large intestine. So they're paired like that. And it's very interesting because I have often heard from people who have problems sleeping. They wake up between 3 and 5, like I don't know, 4, or some people 3:30, and like they'll do that consistently. And I'll ask them, the people who I hear this from, I'll ask them, you know, is there anything going on in your life? Like, are you grieving over something? Because lung is associated with the emotion grief. And yeah, quite often it is that. Or it could be grief they haven't processed fully and it got triggered and it's coming up. And then there's another one, which is there's this phenomenon called cox crow. No, cock. How do you say? What do you call when a cock makes that sound in the morning?
Oh, a crow. A
It
crow?
is crowing. Cock.
Cockadoodle doos.
Yeah, that one. It's called that one diarrhea because it all happens at between 5 and 7 a.m. and people get that. Very sad for them. And it's interesting that now I actually made a really amazing association because the large intestine channel is mostly on the arm. It goes up to the face actually, and it's very different from a lot of the others because it doesn't cross where the actual organ is down by your tummy. The only other one I can think of is small intestine and another one called Sanjiao. But anyway, so out of 12, all 9 others, they all cross where their organs are physically and anatomically. And yet the large intestine channel is often used, or its function, or where you can gain access to, are things associated with the face, with the head, the mind. And I just started to think that it's because we also call it the second, the gut is our second brain. So it makes total sense that way, that it's located where it is on the body in terms of a acupuncture channel, because that's where the energy runs. So we're going to access it that way. But the meaning is that it is the large intestine, small intestine, and the other parts down there, the viscera, they are part of and very connected to actually our brain. So it makes a lot of sense that it has several points that like is the command point for the whole head, for example. Yeah, so that's what I found out about. That's what I've been thinking about with large intestine and lung. And so some foods that are nourishing for the lung is Asian pear and a white mushroom that's sometimes called white wood ear. And so I the color of the season is also white. So oftentimes there will be that connection. And in the medical text, we learn that the lung system, but especially the lung organ, is very vulnerable to dryness. So autumn is often the driest season of the year. And so yeah, one thing to take care of is to make sure that you're hydrated, so there's proper moisture. I mean, when you think about like even a dog's nose, it should be a certain level of moisture. That's how you tell its health. And the same applies to the inside of our nose. Um, so yeah, that's what I would say about how to kind of approach uh, the autumn season. And okay, if you have any questions, please go ahead.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure the foods that you were talking about,
Mhm.
was that associated with the lung or the large intestine or both?
Mostly with lung, because we usually just talk about the it's sort of like the yang organ is kind of like secondary. So we usually talk about in terms of the primary organ, which is the yin organ, which is lung, heart, liver. These are what we consider the yin ones.
Okay.
So it's that.
Okay.
And um, and there's a bunch, and I will definitely throw it into our group. Um, but like use your common sense and think about dryness for your own body, and go from there. Um, okay, let me see what I was. I think the last thing I'll say about just this particular system is that it's also our first gate, sort of gate, or yeah, you can say gate uh, from the outside, which starts at the nose. So the nose is considered the entry point of the whole respiration system, right? And so in that way, it makes it a little bit more vulnerable than all the other systems because it's the first. And in some ways, it's like it guards the rest of it. So when anything you don't want gets in deeper than that, then you start to get into bigger trouble. It's going to be harder to deal with. So yeah, I don't. This is another thing which I like to like discuss and not just say what I think, but that's why I feel like when we talk about immune systems, it doesn't make much sense to me because it involves every system that I can think of. Like you can't really isolate it down to one because if you were to, then you would say the respiratory system's got to be it. And funny thing is that the lung system in Chinese medicine is also the system controlling the skin, and which is truly the outermost boundary we have with the external world. And so that's got to be that. And then because air goes in through our nostrils, these two are the kind of gates we have from the inside of our body to the outside world. And, so like, how do you call other things immune systems if you're talking about, you know, external pathogens, I guess. And
Yeah.
when you get down to the blood, right? When you are talking about like T cells or white cells, white blood cells, that kind of immunity, if we're gonna talk about disease at that point in Chinese medicine, that's like, whoa, that's like second to the last, deepest, hardest, worst place that you want to have problems, because the only thing deeper than blood is marrow. So that would be bone marrow, and brain is considered marrow. So like if you have disease or pathogen in the blood level, then you're really like you want yourself to be to be strong and healthy and balanced at the skin level, at the lung level, at the nose, so that it's not gonna get past that. And yeah, so this is a nice segue into what I wanted to get into more, which is that I think I'd like to just talk about this whole way of understanding from a broader, uh, more zoomed out perspective. Because so when I was reading about it, um, I didn't really know the details about the 24 solar terms, and just hang on one. Okay, so they were talking about how, I mean, not they, this particular author I'm reading, he talks about how the lung is the control center for qi, and qi in Chinese means air, means breath. It means the life force energy. It could also mean vapor, and it also is one of the words that we call the 24 solar terms. So then he goes on to explain why that would be the case, like why it would be part of why the same word would describe all these things. So in a way, we can think of the 24 sections pretty much as just like a way to kind of a way to label the movement of air or climate or weather, and a way to understand the pattern of that. And then, because qi is also inside our body, right? And it's also the stuff we breathe. So in a way, it's kind of like trying to understand how our bodies internally flow with the energy, the air, the atmosphere, and also the climate and the weather of the cosmos, of the heaven or of the sky. And they also pretty much call all of that the same thing. Heaven, sky, cosmos is all what's above. And humans, we're different from all the animals here on this planet because we're the only upright animal. And in that way, we are much more connected to the energy that come from above than the other ones. They are more connected to the energy of the earth. So the cosmos, the heaven, the sky is going to affect humans much differently than it affects other animals and plants as well. So I found that extremely interesting. And then he started to say that we have 12 ribs on each side, right? Together that makes 24. And there are 24 solar terms. Can't be a coincidence. I'm not sure what exactly how that relationship is, but the second one after that was really cool because so we have 4 limbs, and each limb there's 3 big joints. So let's just say the wrist, the elbow, and the shoulder, and then the leg is the ankle, the knee, and the hip joint. And so combine all of them, that's 12. And each of the joints, the 3 big ones, is made of 2 joints anatomically. And so altogether, if you do the math, it's 24. And I actually witnessed this, that someone said, oh, my elbow is cracking, so it's definitely going to rain. And this doctor that I am reading, he explains that. I mean, that's the 24. That's our 24 joints being so connected to the atmosphere that we can tell, we can perhaps forecast the weather because of how our bodies are reacting to the way that the energy is moving out there. And it should be like that. I mean, there's a problem if you have the kind of joints where it aches when it's humid. So that means something's not balanced. But I think in a balanced situation, we feel things in our joints when there's change or movement, strong movement out there. And I have read about, elders in all different kinds of societies who could forecast the weather. And I wonder, how many of them feel it in their joints, feel it in other parts of their bodies. And I think when we go back to being connected more, then we're able to relearn that. I think that's in us. And yeah, unfortunately, it may have been forgotten because we got so far from the connection.
Can I pause you right there?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I absolutely love the synchronicities of what you're saying right now. I was this morning, I was kind of mapping out a masterclass that I'll be doing in September, October, and it was about ancestral trauma healing, right? And so a lot of times when people hear the word like ancestral trauma, they think it's like only for Black people. Like everybody has ancestors, so everybody has ancestral trauma that has been passed down, right? And it could be subconscious, we might not be aware of it. But a big part of the healing component and what I'm going to be talking about and what's so related here is that rewilding, like connecting back to nature. Because again, like, our ancestors were able to do that. Like you said, the elders from the author and his encounters, it's within each of us to be more connected with the earth. And that also means the cosmos, right? So some may say that we came from the stars, and some may say we came from the earth. Whatever it is, it's beautiful to have that balance and being connected with with ether, with the cosmos, and also with the earth. And so yeah, I just really want to emphasize what Moonshing was just saying there, of the more we can be connected, not only with these solar terms, but all of the rhythms in nature, right? And so that's the lunar rhythms, including the solar rhythms, and just more intentionality, right? Like the more that we can be present, then we'll be able to see those things arise. And so you might just think, oh, I just must have slept funny on my elbow, when really it could be your body signaling, a storm approaching or something like that. So yeah, I love this so much. And I think at any time where we can have these gems of wisdom come in to help encourage our intentionality and encourage our presence and our self-awareness of our body, right? Because in order to respond or to notice those responses within our body, we have to be self-aware of our bodies. So I absolutely love this. And yeah, keep going.
I was laughing because, like, when I think of ancestors, I think of old looking Chinese people. Um, um, okay. So that actually is a great connection to me, especially a couple of days ago, but also I would say I didn't start exercising until I was 30 years old because I just was never raised. My parents just never emphasized or taught me that moving the body was important, any kind of exercise was important. I was always the smallest one in elementary school, and I was always the last one to be picked for any kind of sport. And I guess I just developed an aversion to it, and um, and I started jogging. I don't even remember why. I might have read a book about it. um, Started jogging, and then slowly, really slowly, started to understand and feel connected to my body. I really was not at all before that. And a few days ago, when I was thinking about how to kind of structure this, I just felt like I was stuck. I didn't really have any clarity. And I was talking to um, Nicola, with whom I did a UFO ceremony with in Portugal, and it was a follow up call. And she said, uh, it might help you to just. And she wasn't saying it because I didn't talk about preparing for anything. I was just talking about feeling stuck sometimes, or too much in my mind and can't get out of maybe certain patterns to gain clarity. And she said uh, she's been practicing Iyengar yoga for a long time, which is the only kind I like. I've tried a few and I just never really liked anything else. And the three big poses are downward dog, shoulder stand, and headstand, and all of which puts your heart over your head. So I still consider myself.
Can you pause? Can you say those poses again? I got downward dog and then
Yeah. Shoulder stand, which is the yin pose, and headstand, which is the yang pose, because yang because you're like looking above, looking out, and shoulder stand you're looking in. So they're actually, I think my teacher said it's important to do both. If you can't do both, then just do the yin one, the shoulder stand, because you don't want to just do the yang one, the headstand. For some reason, I'm not sure now exactly why that's not desirable. So I am confident enough to do the shoulder stand at home by myself. So I did it, and I did downward dog, and I held each for a little bit. And just like that, it was like suddenly everything shifted. My whole perspective was different. And that's how I came up with a lot of what I'm saying today. And yeah, I would love to explore this further in the future conversations we have here now, all the time, because it's really pretty amazing how, yeah, just making one, and we're thinking of it as organs, but um, uh, in Western anatomy, it's just the organ, right? But in Chinese anatomy, we say the heart is the mind. So it's like, it's funny because then, I put the heart mind higher than my head mind, and somehow that like changed everything.
I love that. I love that so much. I'm just writing something down really quick. Okay, we have a question in the chat. I'm gonna read it to you. All right, so Angelina says, does anyone else have a hard time during this summer-autumn transition period? Also, does the atmosphere you were born in hold any significance? I was born in Florida and have never really been able to adjust to the colder months successfully. What do you think about that?
Oh, that's interesting. We're we're always supposed to be a little more careful during the big transitions. So that will be every 6 solar terms, or every like big season in the, I guess I'll just call it Gregorian calendar. Because yeah, there's a lot of movement of yin and yang energy. So every single living being who lives in the atmosphere, that's when things can get a little chaotic. So we are always, no matter which one. And I would say, I would be curious what you mean by adjusting to the say winter, because that's another thing I wanted to say that I wanted to talk about today. So I was thinking about relating this stuff to the Gregorian calendar, right? And Oh my gosh, that's really hard for me to say. um, so I realized that, the Gregorian calendar, it's like okay, um, it's like set on this 365 days. Well, sometimes every 4 years there's like one more day, and when you set it against, when you like make it parallel against the other one, I'm not sure if this is the right term, but the lunar calendar, or the one that the 24 solar terms are, right? It never matches up. Like this year, autumn started on August 8th. Next year, 2024, it's not going to be August 8th in the Gregorian calendar. It's going to be off because it's not only is it on a different the whole year, the sum of the year is not the same number, but also it follows different pattern, whereas the Gregorian calendar doesn't. So it's like people, I hear people say, right, out in the street, oh, the last July was not like this at all. And it's like, well, it actually shouldn't be, because last July was not the same solar terms that describe that's based on the movement and the climate and the weather. The Gregorian calendar is not based on that. But then why should we expect that the pattern repeat when the days are off? You know what I mean? So yeah, I think it's really strange. And then the thing about adjusting to seasons is that in our modern age, our modern society, we don't go with the seasons. We don't go with the energy of the seasons. I mean, when I was talking about being able to forecast the weather with our joints, it's like we are so far from the seasons that we expect to do the same things every season, whereas we're not supposed to do the same things every season. And when you go against how the energy flows internally, your climate's gonna get screwed up too. So people will continue to go at the same pace, summer to fall to winter, right? In winter, you're supposed to be much slower than summer. And fall, you should be preparing to slow down. And it's fine to be going faster, doing more things in the summer, but you better start preparing in the autumn, or else your winter's gonna get messed up. And if you don't restore in the winter, then the next spring it's not gonna start out all right. And so if this cycle continues, it's going to accumulate. And yeah, so that's a great question, because I would say, and I'm not, I don't know what you mean and how you want to adjust, but I think it's far more important for us to find ways to live according to the flow of the energy, the flow of the yin yang, the flow of the climate, instead of trying to match, what some abstract expectation of you should be in terms of like your productivity as a citizen of this weird world. you know Instead of like expecting us to be in harmonious existence with the world, it's like now we're like being pushed to be some kind of like robot producing, contributing to society, whatever that's supposed to mean.
So I have a question then, since Angelina's question sparked my other question, because yeah, like, so somebody who lived a majority of their life in Florida, right? And there really isn't really multiple seasons. It's Florida, and most of the time it's warm, especially South Florida, right? And it's like the same range degrees all year long. So would that person, even if it's December and it's 90 degrees out, like do they adapt to the season of it being winter, or like how would you How would you address that?
Um, I guess I definitely don't have a specific answer, but I was thinking more about it in terms of light, in terms of sunlight, because that's that's what affects that's what triggers and affects animals and plants most immediately, and their DNA reacts to the intensity of light, so like the degree of how sunlight hits them, and then and the duration. And so I would imagine it doesn't really matter how hot the climate is, how tropical, I guess. Um, yeah, I think if you lived somewhere closer to the equator, like that, then I would investigate um, what the subtle changes of light is. And no matter, I mean, I shouldn't say that. I don't know what it's like to literally live on the equator. I don't know how much the light changes there throughout the year, but the way the Earth moves around the sun, there is still change. So I think it's that. And yeah, if you do live, say, on the equator, near the equator, someplace like Florida, um, it's not going. Yeah, your shifts doesn't have to be as dramatic as someone who lives much more north or south. But there's still going to be a change because no matter where you, the Earth is still further away from the sun in the winter, uh, where where you where winter is in your hemisphere. Okay, yeah. I wish we could just sorry, southern hemispheres because I get really confused. So I'm basically only talking about northern. um, so yeah, in our winter time, even if you lived on the equator, you're still further away from the sun, so you're still not getting the same intensity, the same energy. And so yeah, I still think there's still adjustments there. But say you do, and you can still grow crops there if you were a farmer. So maybe you would grow different things. You know, you wouldn't do the same thing every single day of the year, but you wouldn't like stop like people in the north we have to. If you live down there, you just make your appropriate adjustments. But yes, I imagine it's difficult if you lived somewhere most of your life and then you moved to someplace that's really, really different. Um, but take a look around because in your new environment, I bet people aren't following that anyway. And I was actually thinking about how healthy it is myself because winter where I am is really quite harsh, and I like to go away. I like to go to somewhere south, somewhere warm by the ocean. And yeah, I wonder if that's actually healthy in the long run. And I don't mean just for like a week. Like I want to go for like a month. And yeah, is it really good? You know? So it's fun to be able to discuss this because I don't know. That only happened in the last couple of decades. We humans never did that. At least not on a not as many of us could do that regular or totally regularly. And I wonder if that what kind of impact that has on us as a group and just you know us individually. Um, yeah, it's interesting subject, but this actually came about because I was asking um, someone who gave me a cutting of a cannabis plant, and it's growing nicely. And I asked them, what do you do? How do you harvest it? You know, when, how? And he was explaining to me that only certain parts of the plant produces the desirable buds because the lower parts, the sun doesn't get it enough and they don't produce that. And it's so interesting to me because it's just on a single plant, is going to grow totally differently because it's a few inches further from the sun, so it's not gonna grow certain parts. So that's, I think you can't go wrong if you really observe how the sun is in your world.
I love that. I love that. I'm gonna read some of the comments too. So, in reply to Angelina's comment, Joelle, am I saying your name right? You can tell me if I'm saying your name right in the chat, or you can unmute and pronounce your name for me. She put where you were born, your body's constitution, and where your ancestors were born can play a role in how you function during different seasons. So that's pretty amazing, actually. It makes a lot of sense too, right? Like even when I was looking a few years ago into like the blood type diet, obviously that has to do with your ancestors because your blood type is passed on. And so it's interesting about that of just like how your certain blood type can dictate, what your body can accept more than others. Let's see. Oh, the comment, another comment from Joelle, based off of the yoga poses that Munching was sharing. One more thing that you can do, or an alternative, is she's saying you can also do a forward fold if you're not able to hold the other asanas, so the other poses. Yeah, that's a good one to know. And then Angelina's response to your wisdom, Munching, is I guess it's just uncomfortable. I want to walk outside and be comfortable. It's a lot harder to connect with nature, less life. Yes, I wanna recommend something for that because I experienced that somewhat. I used to live in Washington State, and it was only for like 2.5 years, and it rains a lot, right? It's like very rainy. It's that's true. Like people, it's not just like rainy Seattle, like it actually is really rainy. And I had to retrain, not really retrain, but just train my brain into being comfortable outside, right? Because we're a big nature family. We love hiking, all these things. And if 75% of the year it's raining, then you're not going to go anywhere if you're uncomfortable, right? And so just like, this is not really anything to do with medicine or Chinese, this is just me, my personal experience is that if you can give yourself a commitment of 10 days that you are going to do little increments of cold exposure, right? So like that's putting all your clothes on, like whatever you want to bundle up, but like going outside, even if it's just for 5 minutes, right? And then getting your body used to that and then gradually increasing it. So you can do like 2 days of 5 minutes, and then you can increase it to 10 minutes for 2 days. And then the next 2 days is 15 minutes, right? And for those 10 days, like committing to that every single day for 10 consecutive days, and see how it feels, right? Because we have to oftentimes practice being comfortable in the uncomfortable. And that's something that I learned from Mike Tyson, which who would have thought, but he's actually a pretty incredible human. And I didn't know that until a few years ago. I watched his like documentary, but really one of the things that he was sharing is like he had to train himself to be comfortable in the uncomfortable. And I just took that and I've said that as an affirmation to myself in the mirror. I am comfortable in the uncomfortable. And even like just literally checking the mailbox in the rain when we used to live in Washington, like that was the thing I would say right before, like put on my rain jacket. I'm comfortable in the uncomfortable. I'm comfortable in the uncomfortable. And then I would just go, right? And it would be way more pleasant than like, oh, I'm so miserable when it's raining. Like, let me, like being like this the whole time. Like it was just more pleasant. It changed my frequency, right? So it was the mindset that I was going into an uncomfortable situation that allowed me to find comfort, right? And then that was probably within like year and a half into already living there. And so then in my last half of living there, like I was more comfortable. I wasn't like stressed out about getting my toddler clothes on and like all these things. It was just like, okay, we're doing it, whether it's rain or shine. And yeah, mom loves that. My mom experienced living in Washington with us for a little bit. So yeah, it's just one of those things that I had to get over. And so if you are in a place, an environment where it gets cold, but you're not comfortable with it, just try to train yourself, to get comfortable with it. And yeah, what Moonching was saying, just try to like slow down during those times too, and not put so much on your plate, not put so much on your schedule, all the things. Do you have anything to add on to that, Moonching? And Have is in the house. Anything you want to add, girl? I know you're driving, but you want to mute too.
Yeah. Well, first, was that documentary good? I want to watch it if it is.
Yes, it was so good. Like I seriously was so inspired on so many levels. I didn't know anything about him. I just knew he was a great fighter. Like that's pretty much all I knew. I knew he bit an ear and like that's pretty much it. I know my dad liked him. That's pretty much it. So the documentary was very illuminating, very inspiring. Yeah, just giving you a new perspective, I guess. For me, it gave me a new perspective. Yeah.
Um, yeah, this I would add that, it's like people people will do things so that they can behave or even feel emotionally the same. Like, it should be okay that in winter we don't feel as outgoing. We feel like we want to do things slower. We don't feel chirpy, cheery like the same in summer, but it's not. So then people do things like, artificial light, or I don't know what, drugs, to more caffeine, to get themselves to be that, to match that vibration. When then yeah, you are really going against the vibration, the frequency, right, of the world. And I'm not just going to say the natural world, because it's just the world. And even if you don't feel it in one season, it's going to definitely have a cumulative impact. Um, if you just think of the pure frequencies, for example, the vibrations, like going against something, it cancels each other out. Um, and yeah, like this reminded me of a funny thing the other day. I was uh, when I didn't have a car for several weeks, my neighbor was nice enough to loan me his car for a day. And when I got in right away, I got really, really nauseous because he had one of those really artificial air fresheners on the AC thing. So I had to take and put it in the drawer because I was like, oh, gonna get car sick. And so when I returned the car to him, I just like very subtly, gently said, because he has emphysema, okay? I said, that's really sick for you. And I was just about to suggest essential oil. And he cut me off. He said, yeah, but the air just gets so stale though, I can't stand that. And I'm thinking, oh, wow, that means he never opens the window. And so that reminds me of people who never open the window in their homes. And it's always air conditioned. And when I grew up, we hardly had air conditioning where I grew up. And air conditioning meant the cold. Actually, when I learned that term, that's when I understood that it's people now think of it literally as conditioning the air all the time. Whereas in when I grew up in Taiwan, we called it cold air machine because that's the machine that you turned on like 20 minutes, because my family's really cheap. And electricity is really expensive. You turn it on for 20 minutes when it's like, crazy hot, and it makes cold air. That's its function. But now we have a machine outside, I don't know what they're called, that maintains an even temperature all year round. Like people don't open their windows. And yeah, how much more cut off, and how much like more difficult for you to actually literally acclimate yourself just from your home, just from leaving your home to go to the immediate environment outside, let alone if you think about seasons, right? Like I think that's really, really messing up the frequencies and the energies of humans, because we are altering and conditioning the air that comes into our lungs for the majority of life. Yeah, that's pretty great.
Yeah. It reminds me too, even just like of the opposite of that, right? Like when we are in winter and we have the heat going on 24/7. And yeah,
And yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I noticed during the summer, this was our first summer in the RV full time, and I noticed that too. Like even when we would be in Florida and it was 93 degrees, it was still an element of turning off the air conditioning. Like we felt better turning off the air conditioning, like, keeping it on to like freeze it out, right? Even when we were outside. And then when we got back in, we would turn it off, let that, air like keep us cool, and then at a certain point open the window, right? And it was like a continuous cycle that we would do that and like turn it off windows, on off windows. um but I noticed that in comparison to living in a house and having the air conditioning on 24/7, that it just felt better. Like it didn't feel as exhausting going out into the heat also. Is because you're also, you're allowing yourself to get adjusted and find that balance when you're inside. And then like when you get into the real heat, it's not as, doesn't slap you in the face as hard.
Mhm.
So that's also interesting just to think about that, of how you can bring more balance into your home by not using air conditioning 24/7 or heat 24/7, and allowing part of the outside element to come in. And even in that same token, I noticed that my son, he sleeps better if the window is cracked in his room. And so, whether even like, especially actually, especially in the winter, if the heat is on, like he will like, it just, he doesn't wake up the best when he's, when there's no window open. But if the window is cracked, like he'll sleep longer, and he won't wake up stuffy, like because sometimes that dryness, will cause that stuffiness. And so just something to think about too, that how we can bring more nature inside, and part of that could be just cracking the window.
Yeah, that's so cool. You can observe that and so fascinating too.
Yeah. Mm. Ooh, does anybody have any questions? You can either unmute yourself, or even if you want to share, like if you want to double down on something that Munching shared, or questions, you can unmute yourself, write it in the chat. Um, yeah, I know we're at the top of the hour. I want to respect everybody's time. I just wanted to see if there's any questions. That's okay too if there's no questions. And Munching, do you have any closing thoughts you want to leave us with?
Um, Maybe, but first I wanted to ask. So yeah, is anyone else being feeling really really crazy from this full moon, or what else is going on? Something like 7 planets in retrograde. I would love to know. And I would love to know if you're watching the replay. Just put it in our group because we still have a whole day to go before it's like really full, right? Oh
Yeah,
my god.
tomorrow is the fullest. Yeah, I actually I was talking to Jack about this, I think was it yesterday or 2 days ago, because Destin has been waking up earlier than usual, and I've been going to sleep later than usual. And so I'm like not able to fall asleep, and he wakes up like earlier. Still not like as early as he used to, because I'm still sending him frequencies every night, but just like earlier. Like or no, here's what it really is. So since I have my Healy and I've been sending him frequencies for sleep every night, he went from waking up at 5:30 to 6:30. And recently, instead of, so usually he wakes up at 6:30, comes into our bed, he'll nurse, and he'll fall back asleep for like another hour. But the last 2 or 3 mornings, he wakes up and he doesn't nurse, and oh, he does nurse a little bit, but then he's up, like he doesn't go back to sleep. And I'm like, I want one more hour because I went to sleep so late, but he's up and he's ready. So we've been experiencing kind of like the opposite effect of the full moon, is like he's going to sleep at the same time, waking up a little bit earlier. I'm going to bed later and waking up pretty much at the same time. But yeah, it's been interesting with our sleep the last few days. Anybody else got any shares, any questions? Oh, mom chat. She says, I'm feeling more like a homebody, wanting to stay home, just wanting to stay home. Yeah, I'm feeling that too, actually. And then Angelina says, I have definitely been feeling funky, but I observe and stay quiet about it, just kind of going with the flow of the experience, trying to understand. That's interesting, like just the shifts that we can notice within ourselves when, I mean, obviously on an ongoing basis, right? Like we can notice these shifts within ourselves all the time, but to to start noticing and then keeping track, right? Like mental keeping track of these patterns, right? So kind of like Angelina's first question of like, does anybody have the same thing that happens, you know, around the same time? So it might not be the exact day, but it could be just the shift, right? And so for me, like at every end of summer, beginning of autumn, I have this thing with like acceptance, whether it's like accepting like my masculine and feminine balance, like accepting my roles and certain things like that usually surface at least like the last like 3 or 4 years. It's definitely been that same kind of energy with yeah, just accepting either more of my feminine side or more of my feminine side, and creating that balance is usually what happens like internally with me during this time of year. But yeah, just like going into these things, you know, we have the suggestions that Moonching gave about the foods that we can be eating during this time and staying hydrated. You know, that we have the asana poses. Maybe I can send some notes into the group afterwards, just for everybody, just to be on the same page as we set the stage for our inner terrain, right? And really just caring for our internal world as the external is shifting. But yeah, I think you've given us a lot of things to think about, to integrate, and to really sit with. And so, yeah, if you guys didn't have any questions now, but if something pops up later, you can always feel free to send Moonching a message in the group and just like, you know, do a little and at her, and she'll get those and answer, I'm sure, any questions that you guys have later. Right, Moonching? Yes.
So I wanted to so the last thing is the reason why I wanted to make it more broad instead of focusing on, say, like the organs, because there's so many relationships, like we talked about many of them today. It's not just autumn, but so if we can zoom out and learn more about all the relationships. Oh, okay, just one more minute. I forgot this. This is supposed to be like seriously like the first thing. So, um, in all the madness, I guess in the last few days, I realized that I had missed a kind of holiday, and so I was looking up this holiday, and the popular culture has turned it kind of into the Chinese Valentine's Day. It's about like this mythical story between a man and a woman. But I found out from research that it's actually when there's some relationship between two stars. One is Vega, and the other one that's the female. That represents the female character in this story, and Altair is the other one. And I don't know, I didn't know about any of these, but it was just like so amazing to me, and I feel like this is like a I'm so inspired to find more overlaps between Western culture and Chinese culture, because there are so many that I am just amazed. Even this popular uh, folk kind of holiday, there's so much in there once I start digging that has overlaps with um, Western astronomy or something like that. And so, yeah, I'm really amazed, and I feel like that's where the richness lies, is to find where we actually, our ancestors had common knowledge, and they may have told stories in different ways with different characters and different plots, but in the end, there's some kind of common wisdom that is important for everyone to learn and to know, to have in their lives. So that's why I'm trying to approach it from like a broader perspective, so that eventually maybe we can get finer into it, but to first learn like the broad structure and ideas, and then I feel like we can get really far and really deep, and it will be really fascinating. Okay, I'm muting.
Thank you so much. I was just writing down what you were saying because it's very aligned with the masterclass that I'm working on, right? Like when you just said all of our ancestors um shared common beliefs, right? And a very similar connection with the cosmos. And so when you look at that, even with the amazing ancient structures around the world, like the pyramids in Giza, and then there's structures in Asia and the pyramids in Mexico, and it's like they're all pointing to the same stars mostly. And some variants, some are aligning with the equinox and the horizon and all the things, but this is from all over the world, right? And so our ancestors from each region of the world all had that connection with not just the earth but the cosmos, and it's shown in those ancient ruins and buildings that are so amazing. So whew, yes, thank you, Moon Ching. Thank you everybody who showed up today and who's watching on the replay. So I'll get the link out to everybody as soon as it's done uploading. All right, bye ladies.